So we start item 6 of the agenda with the report from the Committee on Managerial and Financial Accountability. Nick Pacheco has done such a truly terrific job of chairing this committee. I'll turn it to Nick, and at the risk of embarrassing him, I'll also wish him happy birthday.
Thank you. Okay, tonight we're going to start by going over the report that we generated after meeting and the 5 issues that we've identified. One of the first things I want to clarify is what our role is and exactly what we're doing with this charter. Because one of the things that I've encountered in meeting in my own district is that some of the residents have ideas about how the city can be better run in terms of management or the sort of departmental level suggestions. And I want to clarify some of that in terms of how our report is not going down to that level, but is actually dealing with authority, responsibility, and accountability. So the first thing is I want to show one chart because I want to illustrate this point. I don't know if you have this, but the commissioners should all have this chart in their handout. One of the issues we're going to be talking about tonight is what has been identified as the accounting versus the auditing. This debate has gotten kind of convoluted because sometimes different individuals have different meanings for the words accounting, auditing, pre-audit, post-audit. And so what I've done is I try to define the issue in a way that's manageable for not only the commissioners, but for everyone who's here tonight. So if you look up at the wall, and if the commissioners, we have a handout for everyone, what I want to point out to everyone is, and this is something that Commissioner Dennis Zine had adamantly felt that we should identify. When you look at taxpayer money, because what we're talking about is we're talking about your money. I mean, basically, when we talk about finance and management, we're talking about your money. And it's critical that when we're talking about taxpayer money, that it be handled appropriately and there be checks and balances in the process. So what I've pointed out here is at the left-hand side, you have a request for taxpayer money, and I call that in. And when I call it in, I mean is that money is still within the city. Now, through the departments, now many people will request money. We have contracted individuals, we have departments, we have grantees through the grant programs that we've applied to. So many of these people will ask for money to be paid out. The department will have a process, the controller's office will have a process. At the end of that process, I'm looking at, has that money been authorized for payment? Is the taxpayer's money now out? Is it going out? What you will find out from the report at a later point, but I'm using this as an example, is that the committee members, myself, Commissioner Chemerinsky, and Commissioner Zine, all through consensus decided that the controller should be responsible for that the controller should have the final approval on the process. Now, what I want to make clear to you is that's a charter issue in terms of, see where it says controller's approval? That's the charter issue. The non-charter issue is when you get down to the department's process and the controller's process, the charter is not going to micromanage that. That is something where we rely on our professionals, our elected officials, to set the parameters and set the controls. However many hoops, or whatever you want to call them, that the controller is going to make those individuals go through before he signs that check, that is not a charter issue. That is something that's delegated, and that's why we hold him accountable. In this case, I say him because it's Rick Tuttle. So that is what we're talking about. It's important to understand that because it kind of sets the framework of how we're dealing with the charter. In our issue, we've identified that upper portion as accounting, front end, pre-audit. I just use the layman's term of spending the money, the spending process. Once you look down here, we have an issue that will come up later, which is called the verification of that, the independent monitoring, the auditing, the back end, the post-audit. We'll get to that later on, but I really wanted to set the parameters so that you understood what we're talking about in terms of how we viewed our task. The committee also looked at, and we'll be looking at, this is a committee that's going to look at contracting, purchasing, how the city is managing the treasury and other issues. So for tonight, let's look at the 5 issues that we have identified. The 5 issues that we've identified is, should the accounting and auditing be segregated or contained within the controller's office as it is now? The second issue is, should there be a controller auditor appointed or elected? The third issue is, should there be a Department of Finance, and if so, where should it be in terms of the controller, the mayor, and the council? The fourth issue is, should there be a city budget office separate, apart? And then the last issue is, should there be a city administrative officer? Through our report and recommendations, I will point out to the commissioners that there has been some consensus on issues. I want to bring these up front so that you at least get those out of the way. On issue which is letter C, whether or not a Department of Finance should be created, there has been consensus among the committee members that there should be a Department of Finance, and it should be under the direction of the mayor's office. And the analysis and presentation as to the reasoning for that is within the report, but basically it's viewed that the administrative functions should be left with the executive branch of the government, and that's how we saw it in terms of that one issue. The other consensus, which is it's not a reform as it's been identified to me earlier today, but the other consensus is we will still maintain an elected finance officer. And currently the consensus is that the elected finance officer will do what I have identified as the controller's approval process up there, the spending process. So those are the 2 areas where we have reached a consensus. There's no consensus right now in terms of, I'm sorry, there is one other consensus. It appears that there's also a consensus that the accounting, what we think of in terms of the commissioners, the accounting should be separated from the auditing. Okay. And that's what we're pointing to up here. Now, as you go through the report, let's look at this one issue at a time. The accounting and auditing, you have choices. Choice 1 on page 6 is leave it the same or separate. I already told you what the committee came up with on that issue. On page 8, you have the question of the controller auditor, appointed or elected. I already mentioned that we're going with an elected. Page 11 deals with the Department of Finance. We agree that there should be a Department of Finance with the task articulated there. I put out a sort of cheat sheet of all the tasks that are involved in a finance department or financing of a city. It's 2 pages. It basically looks like a grid. It has California cities and their finance officers. It was available at the table if you didn't get it, but it basically looks like this. It's a grid, and page 2 has all the tasks. In those tasks, we identified that the finance department should be responsible for revenue collection, delinquent revenue collection and receivables, cash and investment management, fixed asset management and inventory, debt issuance and management, and grant management. And this is the person that would be appointed by the mayor, approved by the council, serving at the discretion of the mayor. D, the city budget office. You have 2 options here that have been presented. The first option is to create a budget office under the CAO and assign it the following functions: budget preparation, revenue projection, financial forecasting, program evaluation, budget and policy analysis, and analysis of intergovernmental financial policies. And what that means is that they're going to provide the city with information regarding how, if the state acts in a manner that's going to fiscally impact us, if the county acts in a manner that's going to fiscally impact us, you would get that information in the budget office. That's option A. Option 1, I'm sorry. Option 2 is to create a budget office in the mayor's office and a budget office in the council office. This would mirror the federal government, and the functions being divided as I believe Commissioner Chemerinsky has given you in his memo. The last issue, which is the city administrative officer, as is pointed out in the report, unbeknownst to us, we were limited in our time at our last meeting with the Department of Water, at the Department of Water and Power, because there was pesticide and spraying going on. So originally we had a consensus, and then on that meeting, Commissioner Chemerinsky had changed his position. We don't have a consensus on that issue. What I do want to present, though, so you understand and look at, is the present structure. When you look at the present structure, you will see that the mayor does the budget preparation and submittal. It gets adopted by the council. The CAO office is assisting the budget preparation through the forecast and the policy analysis, or the financial analysis. Assists the mayor. The controller handles the pre-audit, post-audit, and revenue projection. The city clerk and treasurer handle the revenue collection, permits, taxes, etc. It's cash management and investments. Now, later on, or in a few minutes, let me give you the proposal or the changes that I have put together as part of the plan. Under my recommendations to you as commissioners, the controller would do the accounting. The mayor would still do the budget presentation, and the council will still do the adoption. However, under the CAO, I've identified a budget office. This is something that's in your report that was modeled after the city of New York. One of the things I want to point out about this issue, as in the report, was that the main mission of the budget office was to open up the process and make it more democratic. That is sort of where we're coming from. The budget preparation, the revenue projection, the financial forecasting, and the public information regarding the budget programs, the budget and program evaluation. The main thrust of that position or development is that, as you all know, as is pointed out in the prior structure, the CAO is currently administering this process and feeding the mayor the information. As you know, the CAO reports or is accountable to both the mayor and the council. One of the issues that's been identified, and I'm going to try to do this as respectfully as possible, one of the issues that's been identified about the CAO is that it's a misnomer in the sense that the city administrative officer, because the CAO does not run the outside departments outside of his own. What he has presented in his first presentation and meeting with us is that it's his job to provide the information, the analysis, the background, the research for the mayor's office, and really get the nuts and bolts put together for that budget preparation. And what I have told other commissioners and told people in the public is, what I see the CAO as being is he is basically, and I say he because it's Keith Comrie at this point, he is basically our reference librarian, our internet, whatever you want to call him, but he's the person we go to for the information. So what I want to do is I want to have that budget office pulled out so that when a citizen from any part of the city has a question, they don't have to be an insider to know that the budget preparation comes out of the CAO's office. That's something that's not intuitive to the average citizen. So the idea is to have a centralized area where you can have a budget information if you have a question. For example, the debate about how much you put in and how much you get out. that would be something that we would have centralized so that people can get that information. The auditor, which we will get back to in terms of this issue, can we go back to the chart that was called the spending process? While we were discussing this issue, I will, can you raise it a little higher? Or while we were discussing this issue, I will confess to you that there was a lot of confusion as to exactly what we were talking about because, like I said earlier, some people had one understanding of the terms and people had other understandings of the terms we were using. What I've been able to synthesize, and I would like Commissioner Chemerinsky and Commissioner Zine to correct me if necessary, is that what they and what we have come up with in terms of our desired goal is that when taxpayer money is being spent, and I know I'm repeating myself, but when taxpayer money is being spent, we would like the controller's office to not sign off on that money being spent until they feel satisfied that it's an appropriate expenditure, that's not illegal, that's not being fraudulently done, that's not something that's outside the approved budget, that once the budget's adopted. Further along this process, we would like verification. In other words, auditing, back-end, post-audit. We would like someone to independently monitor that complete transaction. Now, there's information out there and information that we received that this is being done on an annual basis by the independent auditors. This may be something that will require further discussion, but the one consensus we reached is that the front end, the top, should be definitely separated from the back end. So I call it spending process versus verification of the spending process. Commissioner Zine, have I covered that?
Very on target.
On target, okay. And this is something that the controller will talk to us about and give us an update or give us some information as to how we can accomplish this goal in terms of being in the charter. Now, moving on to the Commissioner Chemerinsky also put out some suggestions on how we should approach this area. And I'm sure you received them or saw them out there. So we try to put a chart together for the commissioners so that you can see this. I know it's hard to read because I'm having a hard time from this distance. Basically, under that model, there would be a controller doing the pre-audit. Now, remember, when we say pre-audit, we're talking about the spending process, which I've already identified in the earlier chart. We have the mayor and the council. We have an auditor who's appointed by the mayor and confirmed by the council. The only deviation or difference between the earlier chart that I presented and the chart that Chemerinsky is presenting, Commissioner Chemerinsky, is the term, 6-year versus 10 years. Okay. We both agree that it can be appointed by the mayor and confirmed by the council. In Chemerinsky's model, the mayor would have his own budget office, just like the president of the United States has their own budget office. And the council would have their own budget office, just like the Congress has their own budget office. Under the finance officer, Chairman Chemerinsky felt that not only would we articulate the duties that the finance officer would be responsible for, but he felt it was necessary that we identify departments to deal with these tasks: Department of Revenue Collection, Department of Revenue Management, Department of Debt Management, and Department of Grants Management. It's basically a infrastructure for the task. So those are the charts and a basic synopsis of the report you received. If there's any questions from the commissioners at this time as to what we've put up there. Well, unfortunately, we're limited by our technology. I don't think we can blow them up.
I think
We have hard copies.
I think at this point
We have hard copies available.
we do have hard copies, and we'll make them available. What I want to do now, thank you so much. I want to always, after a chair's done a report, just ask if any of the other members of this committee have any comments. Dennis, is there anything you wish to add?
I'd just like to add that it's a concise report.
a lot of diligence put into it, and the concern that we have as commissioners from this commission is that the taxpayers' dollars be protected and be spent wisely, and there be no misappropriation anywhere through the system. That was our greatest concern. And the comments that have been stated earlier in the Daily News article about the indebtedness of the city is frightening to me, and I'm sure most of you who want to make sure that doesn't stay in place. There's some changes in that. But your dollar is our greatest concern, and this financial report reflects that. I want to also, with my fellow commissioners and those of you, Nick, on his birthday, is dedicating it tonight to this commission meeting, as we do every Monday evening. And we'd like to sing him happy birthday. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Nick. Happy birthday to you.